Good morning. This is Coffee with the Summerland Kids. I'm Jericho Wagon. This is Aaron Riggs. It's September 4th, 2024, episode 108. Weather in Summerland today is currently 61, but a high of 85, and they have a heat advisory, I guess. So, for the California coast, I mean, I know it does hit 90 sometimes, of course, in Los Angeles. Once in a while, it gets to 100. So, apparently, they're having like we were talking about the Indian summer situation going on in Summerland / Santa Barbara, the coastline.
Oh yeah. I mean, you get used to that coastal weather,
Yeah.
and the heat comes, and it's just like it hits you right in the face.
Yeah. Maybe some Santa Ana winds, like those old Santa Anas that used to come through and like blow the offshore winds at the beach. It was actually pretty awesome, to see that. If you don't live by the ocean, you kind of don't get to experience that magic. I guess if you live by a lake, you might be able to experience some cool different shit. But yeah, it's the ocean is there's so much, so many different days. Every day is a different day at the ocean, for sure.
Oh heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. I haven't seen the ocean or touched the ocean in coming up on a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah, I should
And
have made it. Yeah, God, that's a while, huh?
but I have gone to the beach per se. I guess the river.
Yeah,
The edge of the river. I guess you could call it a beach. There's land. There's water.
for sure.
And it's
Exactly.
really nice. The river is really super nice. It's nothing compared to the ocean, though.
I know, right? Yeah, it just doesn't have the same. I mean, it is cool that if you have a beach chair, sit in a beach chair at the side of the river is pretty cool. Just chilling out. I guess it allows you that almost like that white noise of the river flowing or the ocean doing its thing. It's pretty amazing. And then when you add the element of like fun activities you can do at the beach, that's a whole nother level. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, the fishing pole, you can bring that to the river and to the beach. Like you're saying, the
Yep.
beach
Yep.
chair. You're in your swim trunks. You can jump in the water. Um, you
For
got the
sure.
nice little water sound. Um, but it's a
Exactly.
trip, because the water from the river flows into the ocean, which eventually
Eventually.
evaporates up into the sky, into the rain, and
Yeah.
the big circle of the big circle.
Yeah. We've been having quite a wet summer. I mean, not to the extreme where it's like messing stuff up, because it'll pass through. Like right now, it's perfectly not a single cloud in the sky, but then later on, it'll it might cloud up, and maybe I don't know. I don't know what the weather is here, but it's sort of like it's surprising how it can cloud up and give a little rain shower in the afternoon or something, just even if it's just a little bit. But up by the mountains, that can be a significant amount. We have the San Juan River that runs through town, and then I guess that eventually feeds into the Colorado River and goes into Lake Powell and all that. I'm just blown away at like how much water everybody uses. Um, down the river from us, of course. Eventually, it gets down to Los Angeles, where Colorado's like supplying LA and Vegas and all that with water. And so the future's. I think we're definitely alive at a pivotal time where we're it's on our mind, but it's not like an extreme situation. It's like we've gotten like a couple of years of Santa Barbara situations have been like excessive rainfall, and then Tahoe, massive way over the normal snowfall. So,
Oh yeah.
so we're definitely in a weird cycle of like extremes, whether it's like, you know, oh, we're way low or we're way high. It's like, okay.
Well, it's like we use so much water in California. It doesn't take but a year or two of quote unquote drought time or dry season, or a
Yeah.
couple dry years back to back, and all the reserves, all the reservoirs are low, and we're
Yeah.
worried about water. And it's interesting because how many, like, I switched my front yard from landscape to garden, right?
Okay,
So
cool.
we're using a little bit more water, um, but we're getting some some squash, some melons, peppers, and such. Um, but it's just so interesting how many gallons of water go into a lawn,
Right.
and it's like, what does a lawn produce other than just a cool little green area?
Yeah. Right. I mean, we have that. Fortunately, we have it's all green around us right now, primarily, um, and but if it's not, we don't get rain for a few weeks or something, it does die off. It seems like it's weird how it kind of ebbs and flows with the amount of water it gets. Um, so and then it's wild how that grass can um, can burn. Like a friend of mine lives in California. I want to say probably like Central Valley or somewhere where it's very flat and no trees. Very little trees. He had like a couple trees on his property, but his house burned down. And I got to check in with him and see what's up lately. But he was working on this like probably a modular home project out there, and he took a picture of a fire that was off in the distance, and it was on that grassland. And so somehow that grass fire just migrates closer and closer and closer. And then I guess if you don't have an abundant water source and a way to fight the fire at your home front, you're kind of like, I guess you got to abandon ship and drive down the road and hope for the best.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean, I guess they have certain regulations, like 100 feet from your house. And I know in Atascadero and certain parts of San Luis County, they require it, right? So if you have a house, you have some property, if you don't cut your grass, your weeds, basically the natural environment, um,
yeah,
you'll get a fine, or maybe not a fine, but you'll get charged. The fire department will actually come out and clear any overgrowth, and then charge you to get it done. I remember a lot of people, during the season, especially during hot years, that was a pretty good hustle because everybody needed that done. You get a
okay,
lawnmower and a weed whacker, you go around and hit a few of the neighbors. You can make a pretty decent money during the season, and people are motivated to do it because they know that if they don't get it done, then the city will come in, and the city usually charges quite a bit more
oh wow,
to do
huh,
that. It's definitely a good idea. I think it's 100 feet or whatever they want, 100 feet cleared from the house, um, to prevent that kind of thing. Because yeah, fire, once it starts moving, it's hard to stop, especially when there's a lot of fuel for it to burn.
right, yeah. I mean, you guys saw it there. Is there noticeable burn scar type stuff if you drive out of your little
Oh,
town?
oh, absolutely. I mean,
Really?
there's burn scars from years ago, years back. I went to the forestry department, and they have, like, normally they charge you a little permit fee to go collect firewood. Well, this year they were free, and there was
Oh,
an abundance of trees that they cut down for safety reasons,
okay.
that you can go harvest the firewood. And of course, it starts growing back, but then, like, this year we had the fire, that went across the mountain there, Tabletop Mountain. And so when you go into town, you look up at the O, and there's a big O for Orville, um, and the whole side of the mountain, is not green, it's not gold, it's black, it's dark brown and
Wow.
black. It's like,
Wow.
oh yeah, the fire.
God, that's crazy.
But
Huh.
it only takes a couple of years, and it'll come back. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I was reading somewhere how, like, the Native Americans or the indigenous people,
Yeah.
they would set fires, right? So
Wow.
they would kind of do forest management, to where they would set fires here or set fires there at a certain schedule to burn down the undergrowth, um,
Huh.
to prevent those massive fires from just taking over. I think that
Right.
big part of it is forest management. I've
Yeah.
done a little bit of research into forest management, and with wild areas, obviously there's a logging and different things that are part of that forest management that when the environmental side says, "Oh no, don't touch the forest." It gives it a chance for all this undergrowth and all this extra fuel to kind of build up over the years, to
Right.
where lightning strikes or whatever, a small fire starts, that it just spreads so quick and so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lightning strike that was really close to us, and when a neighbor drove up and told my dad, hey, there's a little fire down here, and so I eventually, quickly drove down and looked, and it was literally like a little, it looked like a little light on top of the tree, like flickering. It was like, it's just small, probably like a handheld, like a little small, as if you just crunched up some newspaper and burned a little tiny spot. But the tree was so green that, and so sappy that it really couldn't get going. But if that tree was already dead and dry, I'd imagine that would have been a pretty good, it would have sparked that thing real quick. So, um, up here we live in a forest essentially. Um, there's a lot of scrub oak, which is just smaller oak trees, and then the ponderosa pines, and some of them are they call like royal pines, which are like 100 years old, and they're really big trees. Um, and there is a thing up here, of course, when you drive up Wolf Creek Pass, there's like a bark beetle um, has come through and killed a lot of trees. So there's a ton of like dead standing trees, which almost looks like a forest fire situation when you look at you're driving up the mountain, you look at the forest, and it's like, wait, why are those trees just sticks now? There's no leaves, and they're toast. So those freaking beetles have just chewed the crap out of those trees, and then apparently I guess it just kills them. Maybe it's almost like cancer or something. It just eats away at the bark, and the tree can't handle it. So that's that for that. All those trees, man. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So
bark beetles and pests and insect pests. We had a little swarm. I don't know if you call it a swarm, but there was like
yeah.
one of my plants, one of my tomato plants had like an infestation of these little bugs.
Oh, huh.
Right. And so the tomato plant was looking fine and it was producing tomatoes, but all the tomatoes had like spots on them.
Oh, weird.
Like, I guess these bugs were, living on the tomatoes and getting into the bugs. So we basically cut that plant out and threw the whole plant with all the bugs on it into the green bin,
Oh,
um,
wow.
to try
Wow.
and prevent the spread of them. But,
Uh huh.
something like that, a garden is a small management process, something like a forest. I just, on the scale of a garden to a forest,
I know, right?
how do you manage, a pest problem like the bark beetle?
Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, you'd almost have to like, you know, there is like what do you call it, natural sprays, but even the natural sprays to me is a little weird because there's other plant life and other animal life, that's happening in the forest, and so okay, so you try to get rid of the rats or something, you poison them if that's one method, and then that something comes along, eats that rat, and then that's got poison in its stomach now. So it's like kind of a bummer system, really. Um, so yeah. Anyways, um, yeah, living out in the country is a lot different than living in the city. You don't even think about the forest in the city. Like in Los Angeles, you got Echo Park. There's that one reservoir. Well, of course, Silver Lake Reservoir. I'm blanking on the name of the other one, but there's a few water elements in Los Angeles, and so they manage those parks because they're just a lot smaller, I guess, in size. It's more manageable. I guess the Los Angeles has a little park system like Griffith Park. I imagine is maintained and maintenance by some sort of fund. You know, there's probably some donors to the Griffith Park, area that help keep it nice and abundant. So
Yeah,
that's cool.
there definitely a need for parks in the city.
Yeah,
I was wondering, because like the city, you're being from LA, or not from LA, but spending
yeah,
some time in LA, and now you're up in Colorado, kind of in the rural, 10
yeah,
minutes, 15 minutes away from town, and the town is a
yeah,
small town.
yeah,
Um, I imagine the job hunt thing is kind of a little tricky, and in the
yeah,
city, you're like, oh, I got 10,000 jobs options to choose from, and I imagine there, in that little town there is a lot less number or even, choices as far as
Yeah.
what kind of jobs are out there. I was wondering, how's the job hunt going?
Yeah, I drove by yesterday a body shop that I had worked there. Like when I came up in 2007, I kind of like I almost felt like a recession right before 2008 myself, where I had been doing the music festivals and the festival scene. I knew 2008 everything really took a hit. That was the big like little recession back then. But nonetheless, I jumped right into a body shop. It was a big body shop, one of those ambitious owners. And I drove by there yesterday, and I just had no desire. I'd met the owner before, but all the vehicles are all new vehicles that they're working on primarily. And I don't really have much interest in that. Like, I planned on going in and seeing what kind of projects. Oftentimes, shops will have projects like that, like older classic car projects tucked in a corner somewhere. Um, but it's kind of like almost like frowned upon. Oddly, in some respect, older classic cars are sort of like a thorn in their side because they know how much hours it takes to do it, and they know the money's not there. With the exception of guys that where they dedicate their life to custom cars, and they're super into it, and they manage to have a clientele that'll that'll feed them. So I have a couple more shops to stop into um, to see if I can you know get into a niche um, situation with working on some classic cars, because that's the only way I would want to be doing that type of profession, even on a part-time basis, is if the stuff was cool. Essentially,
Yeah, yeah. I
you
mean, you
know
get into that production side of, fenders and bumpers and
yeah,
insurance claims.
sure,
Insurance only pays so much, and so you got to meet budget. Where on the art thing, you can spend a little bit more time on the detail and the art side of it rather than
yeah,
just production. Get it done, get it done, get it done. Uh,
right,
versus, oh, let's get it done right. Let's get it done to a higher level. Especially you're talking about these show cars, and yeah, it really
yeah,
is kind of a rich man's toy, I
for
guess.
sure,
You're looking at some of these cars that are like, so expensive because they're rare or they're desirable. And so it makes a little bit of sense to say, okay, let's invest $50,000 into restoring this vehicle because when all is said and done, it may be a $75,000 car.
right,
Um,
yeah,
and those are few and far between. You don't, as time goes on, there's less and less of these collectible classic cars even available.
right.
Uh, and the ones that maybe are available have been sitting out in the barn or sitting out in the field for so long that it's like, wow, that's a big project.
Exactly. I saw a couple like 1920s, I want to say, trucks that someone had um, taken probably off the field and then got them onto some frames, and they were that rat rod style where it's rusty and welded together. So someone has the desire to start something, and maybe their desire is to not even finish it. It's just to sort of like you know, put forth the effort to get it out of the field, mount it on the frame, sometimes put an engine, sometimes not, but at least it kind of presents itself as like, hey, you can start this and do something with it. So, but you got to spend something like, I think one was like 4,000, let's say 5,000 and just below 5,000 was the price that this person was asking. So he might have got those bodies for a few $100. You never know how lucky people can get sometimes when they go and find essentially a piece of looks like trash, you know, um, rusted out or very rusty, something that most people will look at and be like, you can't drive that. But a car builder person will be like, especially now since rat rods came out, yes, you can. It doesn't matter how ugly and how rusty it is, as long as it's mounted on a frame and you get those seats in there. I just saw yesterday. I saw Vanilla Ice. Apparently, that remember Ice Ice Baby. Vanilla Ice is apparently a very successful businessman um, because of his continuous income he gets from that song, and he actually tours a little bit too. So he collects cars, and when they asked him like point blank, how many cars do you have? And he was like trying to think. He didn't even know how many cars he has. He's like he's lost in the collection. He's probably got like more than 50 cars, let's say, and he also doesn't know how much he's got into them because it's just an exorbitant number. He said he uses a antique insurance policy, so they're all underneath the umbrella of an antique cars historical vehicles, and that way the policy's lower, and you only drive them a little bit at car shows. So some of them don't have licenses, no seat belts, no safety stuff at all. It's just something that gets trailered to a car show and then shown. And then that then helps him, I think. It keeps his mojo going because whenever someone sees Vanilla Ice, they totally remember him. And he's kept his look. He looks exactly the same as he did, maybe with the exception of his hairstyle's not quite as as high. but that guy's an avid car collector, and I should go back and watch. Jay Leno is a big car
Jay
collector.
Leno's got an amazing collection.
Yeah.
He's got some, like I was watching this one, he had a steam engine car. Right. To where it runs on a fire that heats the steam, and the steam compression drives the car,
Right.
When I was doing, when I had my little shop area, a couple doors over and on the back side, he did Model Ts.
Oh, nice.
So like he would always have 2 or 3 Model Ts back there, usually one of them running.
Cool.
Usually one of them about halfway done, and usually one of them that he just got that needs all these parts and stuff. And it was kind of cool because he would drive it around town, drive it in these car shows and stuff. And it's just really cool to think that something from way back in the day is still operational and on the road.
Wow.
You look at a car, that's got however many miles on a car, obviously the more miles, the less value. But then some of these older cars, they may have, a huge number of miles, but everything's been redone. New motor, new brakes, new wheels. And, how do you determine the value of that? I guess the value is what someone's willing to pay. Desirable, rare, people will pay more.
That's exactly what Vanilla Ice said. They're like, how much is that? He's like, well, to be honest, it's what like what you said. How much is someone willing to pay for it? That's the bottom line. And sometimes you look at the drivetrain. One of my the lady I was working for, her son bought a 1970 Mustang, and I guess he spent $10,000 on it. And I'm thinking, $5,000 has got to be in that motor all day long, because to build a V8 engine, 350 or 305, whatever that your motor is, but with all that work that goes into the engine, putting it all back together, hooking up to a transmission, dropping that whole thing in there, that's time and energy that it takes to, get that new drivetrain back in there and get it up and running, and then sometimes people have situations in their life where, they have a kid or they get divorced, or it's like, hey, I wanted to build this toy, like you said, the someone who's a little more maybe they're a contractor and maybe they have the regular work truck that they always drive, a brand new truck, but then on the side they have like a 1982 Chevy that they've been working on for quite some time. But then at some point they're like, hey, wait, the market's actually kind of good on this stuff, and they decide to let it go. So there it hits Facebook Marketplace, and they're fishing for a buyer, on some old 1980s truck, or I actually saw a 1989 Camaro, I think, or like, remember that when they had those IROC Z?
I remember those. Those were cool.
Yeah, they were
back in the day. I was like, wow.
Yeah, they were pretty badass. So, and it was like, can't remember what the price was on that one, but it was really clean, and I know it was low miles. That's another thing. Things with low miles always are kind of like, it gets you interested because of the mileage is low if it's actually a car like that. But of course I learned right away that the 2 doors are more desirable than the four doors, because the four door was always like the family car.
Yeah.
So that's sort of not as desired in the hot rod community. The two door is more the sport model, So
Yeah.
that's what everybody wants, the two door.
Nobody wants the 4-door sedan. Everybody wants the 2-door coupe.
Yeah, exactly. So
And it makes a huge difference, like on those resale values.
it
Okay, so
does.
brand new when they were on the showroom floor, maybe the 4-door model and the 2-door model were not that much of a difference in price, right?
Exactly.
But then since only so many sold, or these are the more desirable ones, on that resale market, on that collector's market, those 2-doors are like twice as much as the 4-door.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah. And I think sometimes they have some compatibility with the front fenders, the hood, the emblems, the parts, essentially the windshield, etc., could be the same. So I think in some cases, sometimes those cars get taken apart for parts, depending on the conditions. Um, but thankfully, when I was full time in automotive, my boss could see that I desired to work on the old stuff, and there was a fair abundance in Carpinteria in Santa Barbara of people with those old cars, because that community is definitely like the successful ranch owner who wants to do his old truck and do it up. And then my boss was always very I want to say like realistic in terms of numbers. Um, as far as what you call out to the client, what's it going to cost me to do this job? He did get more and more savvy as the years went on to asking a higher price for the actual job to get done, because he knew that the time was going to be put in. So that's another thing. The learning curve on that stuff is quite extreme, to know your numbers and learn your numbers, because otherwise you're sort of like I found myself independently working on a few jobs where even at 6,000 I was sort of giving it away at that point, because it was like on the mark in terms of course my labor rate was quite lower than everybody else's, because I was just a one-man operation. My rent was a lot lower. I was kind of like on the low level in terms of that the wages. So, but even at $6,000, that's still way under mark of what a shop would have charged. It probably would have charged 12 and not even thought about it. So,
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
wild to think that, I see it on eBay all the time, the same item, one person selling it for hundreds, the other person selling it for 50 or
Oh
whatever,
wow.
and it's like, it's so interesting to me how, the motivation to sell can really influence the price, houses, anything. Like if you're like, oh, I want to move. Okay. The house is worth $250,000, say, but you want to sell it in a month. So you're willing to take 225,000, or maybe, you did some upgrades and you want to take your time. So you listed it 275 because it's got
Right.
some extra things, and you got your time. I don't care. It can sell in 3 months. It can sell in 6 months. It's, I guess that determines the market, not only the buyer side, but the seller side. Are there motivated sellers? Like I'm thinking about your collection there, Grandpa's collection. It's like,
Yeah.
you could probably get away with, oh, let's just sell these quick, right? And so this comic book's worth $100 per se, right? And you're like, you know what? Let's just liquidate it. I got 100 of them, so let's sell them for 75, right?
Right.
Let's just get them quick. Or you might, take the time and go, you know what? These regular ones are selling for 100, but some of them are selling for 300 or 500. Let me take my time. Let me take the next 2 or 3 years and mark them up at that 500 or higher price to maximize the thing. I guess in business it kind of comes down to overhead, right?
Yeah.
How much cost is your shop, your storage, how much you got invested, how much time and everything.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, if you got rent to pay on your shop, you might be willing to go, quite a bit less than what maybe market previous market, value might be, just so you can sell it that month and sell it that week, so you can get caught up.
Yeah. And then, there's always the next thing too, like the thrill of what's next. With cars, people oftentimes sell something and then just automatically buy something else. I could see, there's that, what is it called? Hunting and gathering, or just you feel like you're at the right place at the right time. Especially when you're at the swap meet, the car swap meet, and you have $5,000 in your pocket or something because you just sold something, and all of a sudden that car just presents itself right there, and then someone's willing to bargain with you and make a come to some sort of agreement, and there you are again, starting from scratch, like you said, the neighbor, always having one that just arrived that needs all the love, then another one that's running, and another one that maybe is like done and for sale or done for a customer or something. So it's
Yeah,
cool to see.
it's
Cool to see
wild.
all the
So
progress.
many
Yeah,
so many little variables in that kind of business.
exactly.
And like you talk about, like, oh, you got that. I got the body parts for $100, and then okay, labor, pull it off and get it cleaned up and put on a frame, and maybe it doesn't have a motor and transmission, so you're not going to get full price, but at the same time, you want to make some profit on what you've done as far as getting the body. So
Yeah,
there is like that wholesale market where you got to realize, okay, I'm selling it to someone else and they're going to do this and that. So I better leave some meat on the bones for them. Uh,
yeah,
Not necessarily optimizing your profit margin. I was doing some eBay with a friend, and that was his thing. He's like, oh no, we can get, 1,000 for this. Okay, we could, but that could take 3 months, right? To where if
right.
we decide, let's sell it for 700, we could sell this thing tomorrow. So
Wow.
how much is that 300 extra bucks worth in time?
Yeah, yeah, that's a big factor.
If you're waiting 3 months and you got to pay $100 a month storage, what good is it to sell it for
Yeah,
1,000 if you can get 700 today? So
I know
that's always
exactly.
a thought.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, another good show, man. I can stay with you after too if you want. Just chat for a sec.
Yeah,
Um,
just for a quick minute.
yeah, yeah, sounds good. All
All
right.
right, we're gonna wrap up the
Cheers,
live
everybody.
stream.
Yep. Have a great day, everybody. This is episode 108. Coffee with the Summerland Kids. Have a